watching an interview yesterday. I don't know whether it was Wolf Blitzer or Jay Tapper or somebody on CNN. It may have been MSNBC. I'm not even sure. I don't even remember. Don't even care to remember. But I know that Congressman from South Carolina, Jim Clyburn, is James Clyburn, one of the second most powerful man in the Democrat caucus after Nancy Pelosi was being interviewed, and there were questions about the incidents of George Floyd and most poignantly about Rayshard Brooks and police and et cetera. And one of the things, Jim Clyburn is from South Carolina. He represents the district, I believe, around Santee, which is a neighboring town of Orangeburg, which is a fairly large town. The big metropolis of South Carolina is Columbia, which is up in the northwest part of the small state of the Palmetto State of South Carolina. Anyway, Jim Clyburn and I were born about 100 miles apart from one another. I think he's a little bit older than I am. So we were both raised in the same South Carolina, North Carolina, Dixie tradition of the picking cotton. And I'm sure that he was very close to members of his family that were slaves, et cetera, such as I was as well. And we come out of that tradition. We come out of the colored water fountain tradition. We come out of the segregated school tradition. We come out of the Jim Crow tradition. Both of us. He's a bit older than me, I think. And he said something I thought that was very interesting. He said, that we never had any problem with the police. And he says, I do remember also when the first black police officer in our little town became a police, they hired the first person to be, because all the police were white for a long time. And I remember the first black police officer that was hired in our little town of Red Springs, his name was McLean, Mr. McLean. And now my cousin, Ronnie Patterson, is the police chief, little town I came out in Red Springs, North Carolina. But we really never had any problem with police. There was never police brutality. And I'm not being an Uncle Tom or being, naive. We just, all this problem now that we see with police brutality. In the Jim Crow South, we never had it. You said, we didn't have to. You had the Ku Klux Klan. All right. We can argue the Klan at another time. But I can tell you, the police themselves, it was, and oftentimes the police treated us like many of the so-called Japheth people treat Japheth people, the police officer. They would let my father go, or they would let my uncles go, or they would tell him, to go home. I know of a lot of people that were Hamites, got arrested. The police picked them up, took them to the precinct, and then sent them back home. Didn't arrest them. And the police chief for all the years I lived in Red Springs, his name was Higgins. He was an Irishman, Ireland, I think he was an Irishman. And, he just, I don't know where all this is coming from. But let me see here. So when Clyburn said that, I said, I'm not the only one that experienced this, right? We didn't have a problem. But now, I hear that what I'm looking at now is that they are talking about, and they're actively doing it, taking down, renaming many of the major forts in America that are named after Confederate generals, and taking down many of the statues. There's a fort that's only 29 miles from the little town I grew up in called Fort Bragg, North Carolina. It's the home of the Screaming Eagles, the 82nd Airborne. And Fort Bragg, named after a Confederate general who lost the battle, named Braxton Bragg. And it's that fort, that massive, and it is a major fort. My mother and my father worked there after they got out of the fields. And I've been to Fort Bragg, and my uncle Jackson was a member of the 82nd Airborne, married my aunt. He was stationed at Fort Bragg. Many of the soldiers at Fort Bragg came to our little town for partying at our nightclubs and everything. And they want to change the name of Fort Bragg. I'm against it. Oh, I know it's a Confederate general. I know that. And then there's, of course, there's Fort Benning. But Fort Hood, Fort Benning, Fort Bragg, And now they want to take down the statues of General Robert E. Lee. You know, Robert E. Lee was really a member of the Union forces until he recognized he was born in Virginia. If there's going to be a war, he decided to take up the cause of the Confederates. And I know that the Confederates wanted to maintain slavery. They didn't win. And so they're saying now that all their symbols of the Confederacy ought to be removed. I'm against it. I'm against it. I think that what you're trying to do is to rewrite history. And, you know, I'm trying to think of this statement, who made the statement that, you know, nobody fears a man in a hood and a burning cross. And the statement, was it Franklin Delano Roosevelt? The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Why are you afraid of? They're dead and gone. You say, well, the Dixie flag and the Confederate emblems and the name of those forts is an insult to young black men that are training at Fort Bragg to know that Braxton Bragg, who was a general that lost a major battle, now they have to work there at a fort. I don't think they even knew anything about it, first of all. And if they did, who cares? But the liberals and the Black Lives Matter have declared war again. Another war against the Confederate. We now got another war going on against the Confederacy to destroy them one more time. No, I went down to Gettysburg, you know, and when I went to Gettysburg, the first year I went there, I wore a gray suit because that was the color of the Confederate Army. I think they're wrong about this. I think they're dead wrong. Oh, I'm not in support of slavery. I'm not in support of the South that wanted to maintain slavery and its brutality. I'm against that. I'm deadly against it. I just think now by changing the name of the forts, you're not going to change not one person that was whipped, beaten, and overworked by changing the name, and you're not going to get vengeance for them, and you're not going to help anybody now. I think our history is our history. You can't rewrite history. You can't do it. Now, you can take down the emblems and the symbols and the names and all that, but you can't rewrite history. See my gray suit? I wore that gray suit, that gray vest. I had a gray jacket. I wore that day, the first day we held our Gettysburg racial reconciliation meeting. I wore that because I wanted to be identified with the Confederacy. And this is at Gettysburg, that great killing field. 60,000 troops lost their lives that day, and I was trying to memorialize it. And there you see me there. I'm against it. I think it's wrong. And I think these politicians that are kowtowing and, you know, sucking up to these people, you know, keep Fort Bragg, Fort Bragg. I don't want to know it by any other name. Keep Fort Benning, Fort Benning. Keep Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee is a hero of mine. Now, of course, he did a lot of, I think he fought for a cause that he believed that was a righteous cause. I really believe that he was wrong. He was wrong. He was wrong. But I believe he was fighting, that he thought he was fighting for a righteous cause. But by taking down his statue it's not justice, my friends. It's not. Not at all. I think we're going down a path of utter destruction. And like I said in my earlier statements regarding Rayshard Brooks, and a matter of tension, spiritual tension, because this is all a part of the tribulation. This is a deconstruction of the American process completely, where now violence, indifference now sets in, and a loss of historical understanding. And you got a vile individual, you got a vile snake in Tribulation Trump that's now the head of the Republican Party, far worse than Robert E. Lee or Braxton Bragg or anybody of that Confederacy war could ever dream about being, now sits in the White House. Jefferson Davis could not nearly be as mean and sensitive and a liar, as vile, as selfish, as pathologically degenerate as Tribulation Trump. No, I think those symbols and monuments should stay. But they're going to go because that would just further fuel Hamite people to think somehow or another they won a victory. But Hamite people will never win a victory to learn to win the victories in their own neighborhoods and their own homes. They've got the most disillusioned family structure any place on the planet. They are at the bottom of the world's social register of men that don't take care of their children, don't raise their sons to be men, don't take care of their wives and the financial responsibilities thereof. They're at the bottom of the totem pole. You can look in the Aborigines in Australia, or you could the Peruvians in Peru, or you can search the world and you can't find a man that's as irresponsible, non-defender of his community, his neighborhood, his family, and his children as the black man who's declaring now that the statue should be taken down and that some sort of honor should be given to him. And of all the things that are being preached, of all the things that are being said about George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, Barack Hussein Obama, Al Sharpton, of all those things, not one word to the Hamite man about, hey, brother, you need to first get the log out your own eye. You need to go back home and take care of your own family. You need to learn how to be a man and take care of your own community. You got nothing. You own nothing. You've built nothing. And it was in the mercy of the South that you were able to raise children like Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington. But now you're raising rappers. Sister Gail Seck sent me a link to a young man named Hassan, I think Campbell, yesterday. And I listened to him. Young brother. I listened to him.
Before you decide that y'all want to, like, if you're going to really, really fight for something, man, take the hood back. Take the hood back. Start raising our kids, not to kill our kids. Teach your children not to kill my children. I already taught my children not to kill your children. How about that? Teach your sons to love my daughters. I already taught my daughters to love your sons. How about that? Let's talk about it.
And of the many things he said, he was talking about the same thing. Listen, I'm teaching my son we got to take care of our own neighborhoods. We got to learn how to be men in our own neighborhoods. I'm teaching my son not to shoot your son. You need to teach your son not to shoot mine, and we won't need the police. And then he went on to say this: don't trust any of these people that have walked through Lucifer's doors. And by that, I mean he was referencing Jews. And I don't mean to call the Jews Lucifer. But any basketball player, whether it be Michael Jordan or LeBron James or any rapper like Jay-Z or Puff Daddy or any actor like Denzel Washington or anybody in prominence, once they get these contracts with he calls that walking through Lucifer's door, they don't know you no more. They don't know nothing about you no more. They don't know nothing about being black no more. They don't understand you no more. Once they become mayors of these cities, once they become the mayor of Atlanta, once they become the mayor of Dallas or Houston, once they walk through that door, they don't know you no more. I said, listen to this young man talk that talk.
Stay away from these celebrities. They're not your friend. Once they go through the doors of Lucifer's house in the music industry, they're not of us no more. Get that through your skull. I don't care which celebrity it is. When these celebrities want to have a hand in a say-so in the black community, tell them to put their money where their mouth is at. Oprah, you can't talk about the black community until you till you give up some of that $2 billion that you got. $1 billion of your money can make black people, the black community, a superpower. 1 billion, and we ain't even asking for 1 billion. We don't even want half your money. Like I said, there's 47 million black people in America. Oprah Winfrey has 2 billion going on $3 billion. Jay-Z, billionaire. Nas, Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, 50 Cent, you know what I mean? LeBron James, like these people got enough money to buy the whole planet. And they're not doing nothing for us. So we don't want to hear about your opinion and what's best for black people when you done took yourself and moved to the highest mountain in gated communities and said, fuck the hood. We don't want to hear your opinion. You don't speak for us. You're part of them now. You're part of the top of the pyramid. You're not down with us. You're part of them. You're not us.
And he's right. These black rappers don't care. Once they get that contract and get that money, they ain't black no more. And nobody is telling us that we need to stop killing one another. Men need to be leaders in their homes, leaders in the church. We're blaming everything on the white man, that the white man need to stop doing this and not telling us that we need to stop doing anything. And we are the worst people. We are the lowest people on the planet. And not just that, spiritually, we're the worst churches. We have the worst religious ethics. We have the worst morals. We have the worst ingenuity. We've never built anything. And we had Harlem and hell, we gave that away to a bunch of men who suck on other men. And women who suck on other women. We gave Harlem away. Our home, our flagship. And we're talking about stop the police. No. We ain't gonna never solve this until we take up the responsibility of who we are. And that's the truth, the whole truth. And that's why God has sent ATLAH. You'll hear more about it. I'm James Evan Manning, everybody. I'm the Lord's servant. This is a bit of a news blog we do looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I am he. I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning. And I'm here to serve you with news and information.